Hello there everyone, and welcome back to Russia in Context. Today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. It's going to be a bit of a story time. I'm going to tell you a little bit of why I came to Russia, why I came to live here, the history of all of that, because I've seen a few questions about that in the comments over the last month or so. And I'm also going to highlight one thing that I very strongly dislike about life here in Moscow. So we'll start with the why I'm here, and it might sound a little bit strange, but it has to do with a pin. Actually, I do want to make one other thing here clear before I get into the story, which is, why am I walking in a forest? Well, if you live in a city like Moscow, you could theoretically go walk in the center, but why would you? Because realistically, it's a city, and when you're in the city, you really start to appreciate the green areas like you have here, where there's lots of trees, you can listen to the bird song and things like that. So you're not going to get to see many great views of memorable Moscow landmarks until the end. You might notice one of them at the end, but while chatting and telling the story, I find it nice in the quiet and calm part of the park. You maybe can hear some of the noise of cars in the background, but I think for what I want to set out to do, this is just a much more pleasant place to do it. Anyway, back to the story. Why I'm here. Like I said, it has to do with a pin. And when I was in high school, my friends and I, with not much to do in suburban America, we went just like exploring whatever random place we could find, and we came to an army surplus store. And in the army surplus store, they had all sorts of little pins, like little metal pins that you would wear on your jacket or maybe on the strap of your backpack. And I bought a pin with the hammer and sickle on it. I suppose this was probably in the 9th grade. Don't remember 100% 9th, probably 10th grade actually. And I started wearing it around school, just like this kind of, I don't know, counterculture type thing or whatever it was. I thought it was cool. And one day, the assistant principal, who I was not a big fan of for whatever reason, he came up to me and he said, like, you should take that pin off. You don't understand the history of that symbol. You don't understand what it means. And he was completely correct. Absolutely. And I've definitely come to appreciate that symbol for what it does stand for. All the positive connotations and all of the negative connotations with it as well. But at the time, being a teenager, I didn't really like being told by him that I didn't know what it was about. And he was true, and I understood that. So what I did was I started to research what the symbol meant. So in the years before Wikipedia, I went to the library, I dug up some dusty old tomes with information about the Soviet Union and about Russia in general, and I started to do a little bit of research. Now, obviously not too much. Most of the books back then, most of the information available was very academic. It was a little dry for my tastes, but my palate had been wet, and I started to become a little bit more interested in Russia. Fast forward, about a year or so, and I was in a world literature course in my high school. And in that course, we read Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment and Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. Now, not a huge fan of the latter one, but Crime and Punishment, 100%. Like, still love that book, fantastic, and it left a very deep impression on me. So I was already interested in Russia, thanks to that hammer and sickle pen and a very basis of the understanding of what the Soviet Union was. And then I discovered Russian literature. So I had an understanding of history. I was in love with the literature, or what I knew of it at that point in time. And I was also studying Spanish in high school. And getting into my junior year, I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do in university. I knew I enjoyed Spanish, but I still didn't really have any clear idea of what I wanted to do moving forward. My newfound interest in Russian literature and Russia, coupled with my enjoyment of studying languages with Spanish, I decided that I would study Russian and Russian studies, which is, when I got to university, exactly what I did. I still didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but that was what I studied. So I studied all of that for 4 years. The first time I came to Moscow was actually in 2006, when I studied abroad here for a semester. And I'll be completely honest, I hated it. The Moscow of 2024 and the Moscow of 2006, very, very different cities. And I don't want to say that I hated it completely, but I had a really good time, made some very good friends, and had some very memorable experiences. But overall, I wasn't like in love with the city, I'll put it like that. Regardless, I finished out university, I got my diploma, and wouldn't you know, it was 2008. The fun financial, the Great Recession set in. And as a recent graduate of university, there weren't a lot of options available. So I started looking in and I started thinking about what to do. Do I go on and do a master's program, take on more debt, and 2 or 3 years later, maybe find myself in the same position with even more debt? Do I move from the Midwest, maybe to New York or DC, where jobs connected to Russian studies and the Russian language were a bit more common or a bit more available? Or, and this was the third option, and the one that I evidently went with, do I just say, screw it, move to Moscow and try to set up shop here? And I went with that last option also because when I finished university, I could read Russian without really too many problems. My vocabulary was, compared to today, greatly limited, but still I could get through texts. I had some real rudimentary writing skills, and I could kind of understand when people chatted with me. But in terms of speaking, I just couldn't speak Russian, like hardly at all. Very, very fundamental stuff. And so yeah, I figured what better way to learn the language and to figure out maybe what I want to do moving forward in the future than to just move to Moscow, you know, and go from there. So I moved to Moscow in 2009. So it's been about 15 years at this point in time. And yeah, that's kind of the end of story time. I can go into more detail of how that all set up, but as to why I'm in Moscow, that is it. I moved here in 2009, and then, yeah, little by little, I just started to feel more and more at home here. Again, 2009, the city had not drastically changed from 2006, so it was still kind of not a great place in a lot of regards. But the one thing that I can say is over the last, 10 years probably at this point in time, the city has greatly changed for the better. So, and I would say Moscow is definitely at this point in time from the ones that I've visited, which, obviously there are thousands upon thousands of them, but in my experience, Moscow is one of the best cities on the face of the planet. There's no arguing with that. In fact, it probably could be in like the top 10 if it weren't for various geopolitical situations ongoing at the moment. But we'll see what the future holds. Regardless, it's where I call home now. And again, that's one of the reasons I started this channel, was so that I could share some of that with you and also maybe highlight some things that you won't see in other English language channels. And that's actually one of the things I want to talk about. So story time is finished now. I want to talk a little bit about something that I really don't like here in Moscow. And we're going to actually cross the street to do that. I'm going to flip the camera around as we move out of the forested area here and into the light, so you can actually get a glimpse of where we are. If you've watched some of my older videos, you probably will recognize it. Here we go. Okay, so we're coming out, and we're gonna maybe cross the street real fast here. That is MGU, that's Moscow State University. I am going to quickly run across the road here, because the crosswalk light is not working. Fantastic. Okay. So, you can actually see a little bit of it there. A lot of construction going on. And the reason I decided to highlight this today, in fact, I'll pull up to it here in a second so you can see, is recently the YouTube algorithm likes to suggest other English language Russian channels, or English language YouTube channels about Russia, likes to suggest those to me, thanks to the algorithm doing its thing. And I saw a video, yeah, that right there, we're gonna be talking about that in just a second. I saw a video of a very large, jolly, bearded man walking around an older neighborhood in the northeast part of the city, and he was talking about how the road didn't look so good, and it's like, well, normally the city looks great, but this road doesn't look so good, but that's okay because they were going to fix it up. They had fixed it up. And what he was talking about with fixing it up were specifically, you can see them right here, these curbstones. There were piles and piles of them that the man was looking at, and the curbstones that you're seeing right here are really not that old. These were probably put in, I would imagine, a few years ago, and they're already crumbling and they kind of look like shit. So, but we're gonna cross the street, we're gonna move closer to the university, okay? And we can start to see, there we go, okay. So I'm gonna come over here. We're gonna take a look at these curbstones. All right, so these curbstones are granite. This is just straight up granite. It is a slab of rock. It's not compressed. It's not some sort of composite. It is granite. And I would imagine that these have been here pretty much since they were put in the ground, probably back late 1950s, early 60s. But the city of Moscow, for whatever reason, has decided, probably not the cleanest reason, they decided to rip them out. And you might argue, well, like those newer curbstones is going to make it look better, but as I just showed you back there, those ones that are about a few years old already look like trash. They're already crumbling and falling apart. These, which have stood the test of time, are going to disappear. I don't know where they're going to go. You can actually see, I was here this weekend, that's why I came back here. You can actually see they're like kind of chipped and cracked down there. That's not because they were in bad condition. It's because over the weekend, I have no idea why they did this, they had already pulled these out. These stones were actually laying on the asphalt, on the sidewalk right here, and for whatever reason they put them back in the ground. I do not understand why they would do that, but that's where we're at. So, colossal waste. And the reason this kind of pisses me off, not kind of, it does piss me off, is the government here in Moscow, the Moscow city government, has spent, I don't know how much money out of the city budget to rip out, year by year, they've gone from, I'm going to switch back around for a second. They've gone around to different sections of the city and they have ripped out the curbstones. They, at one point in time, got rid of all the asphalted sidewalks and started putting down bricks, which was kind of nice in the center. It had kind of a tourist feel, but then they started doing it in residential neighborhoods and for people who rollerblade or kids on like bicycles or just strollers. It's super annoying because it's right as you roll over the bricks. They've kind of stopped doing that. I don't know if people started to get really upset about that, but they've instead now switched to curbstones. So, has anybody asked for the curbstones? No. I mean, you watching this video might think I'm just sort of being unnecessarily like a curmudgeon. Like, I don't like the curbstones. But here's the thing. I don't know anybody who enjoys the curbstone situation. And again, mainly because, as you can see, when they do it, they completely make a mess of the sidewalk or the asphalt that's there. They rip out all of these old curbstones. And the reason I came up to Moscow State University today is because for as long as I can remember now, Moscow State University's territory is a little bit like separate from that of the city. So the Moscow city government hasn't been able to fully touch it probably and change it as much as it would like. But this right here worries me a little bit because this being one of the last bastions in the city of what you might call like an old style atmosphere, when you come to Moscow State University and you walk around the territory, it does not feel like the new sterile and soulless Moscow that they've slapped together in the center. It feels like an old part of the city. And like, that's great. I love that. Anyway, I'll keep walking here. But yes, for people who have to live with this, they start the construction, they make a huge mess. This situation right here, I would imagine, will be going on for the next month or so. They're gonna destroy everything, they're gonna rip everything out, and then this will just stay like this. Eventually they will put the new curbstones back in, and then at some point in time they will run new asphalt all over the top of this, and that'll be the end of it for a few years. And then, like I said, I showed you those curbstones back there that were not looking so good, and yeah, at some point in time they'll have to rip those new curbstones out and put non-broken ones in. Anyway, real quick, the area back here behind me, this is part of the Moscow State University's Botanical Gardens, and it's actually, I'll flip the camera around again, it's actually closed off from visitors. I've never seen any visitors in here. I don't think even tours are allowed to go through here. I'm gonna slip us through here. And you can see how overgrown it is, and it's kind of awesome. During COVID, I was walking in this region one evening in the summertime, and not from this side, but from the other side over that way, kind of from where we came. I saw a fox run across the road from this set of the gardens over to that forested area where we were walking in just a little bit ago. So the wildlife here has definitely reclaimed it, which is quite nice. But let's keep going. Okay, so as I was saying, super annoying. As soon as they hear English speaking, they just like, shut up, it's fantastic. It's one of the reasons I don't like to speak English just out walking around in the city, because it's kind of weird. I would much prefer to either not speak or speak in Russian, but here we are. Anyway, actually gonna step over this and move out to the street. The street that we're on right here, one of the nice things that they did do with regards to the university is they did close this street down. I don't remember if this is Ulica Lebedeva or Mendeleev. I don't remember. It's one of them. Anyway, there's another street like this on the opposite side of the main building. So if we were to cross all the way over, which we're not going to do, but they, a few years back, around the time of COVID actually, they closed it off to through traffic. So the only way to get into it now is there's like a checkpoint right there, and you have to have a pass. Buses obviously go through, but it does keep the amount of traffic here at the university to a minimum, which again makes it a nice place to walk. That's why I'm up here again making this video. Just it's a great place to walk. It's nice and green, it's nice and quiet. And again, in the city, that is something that you come to greatly appreciate, especially a city as large as Moscow. So anyway, the video is probably getting a little unwieldy in terms of length, and I don't want that. It is one seamless video though, so I guess that does make it a little bit easier to edit on my part. We'll come out to the university so we can have a look at the university, and then I'll wrap it up. Basically though, today with the video, I just wanted to do a little story time, have a little bit of a more of a vlog style format, and also to share, I guess you could maybe call it a pet peeve, one of my major pet peeves, the ongoing unnecessary construction here in Moscow that ultimately, in my opinion, ruins the historical atmosphere of a lot of places in the city. So I'm gonna switch this back around, and there it is. There's the main building of Moscow State University, which again, we've been here before, but that's, you know, it's still great. Still great. So yeah, I will wrap the video up here. I'll let you enjoy a last few scenes of the main building here, and this has been Russia in Context. Thanks for watching.